morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to No Dice, No Glory. Brought to you by our day jobs and way too much alcohol, we're proud to proffer to you some of the finest in wargaming news and reviews online. Or anywhere, really. So, come on in and enjoy the podcast.
Thank you, Sean, very much. Welcome to the No Dice, No Glory Oil Wars podcast, which we've been putting off for a while, but I'm joined today by Iron Tom Burgess.
Hey, howdy, folks.
Matt Varnish, a.k.a. Dennis Campbell, a.k.a. Gepard Killer.
Hardly. More like killed by Gepards. What's going on, everybody?
And I am Chairborne Tom Mullane. So we are the three writers of the three respective articles, and we're going to chat with you about Oil Wars. But before we get into each of the respective lists, we are going to discuss some of the stuff we've been up to and some of the stuff that is going to happen. So I'm going to give you the No Dice report from Cold Wars. I missed Fall In, and my buddy Matt Varnish, who was down there.
Yep.
Who came down with you for Fallen?
Scott Obsidian 23, who did the Australian article for No Dice, No Glory.
And Scott's the best painted at Canadian Nationals, right?
Oh yeah, it's going to be tough to beat him at this year's Canadian Nationals. His army's already done. He's done early war Australians from Intobruk.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to try anyway because he inspires me to be better. Yeah, inspires me to be better. So our Cold Wars event this year was not just a standard tournament. Instead, we had a couple of different people, and Mitch would be better versed at all the different folks that help with the rules. I won't pretend that I helped with any of this because I didn't. My only role was really to sit my butt in a chair and have a ringer army. But I had a lot of fun because I got to play. I got to play two different games in the second and third round. This was like a thematic event. So at one point in the middle of the second game, Mitch had a nuke flash and disabled all sorts of stuff on the table.
It's wicked.
The Soviets decided to drop chem warfare on everybody in the first round and lost themselves some points from the international press. And I kept begging our NATO commanders to let us strike back because I wanted to use chemical weapons on people. But I was told...
No first use.
I was told by Chris Jackson that NATO would never do that. And he had a very serious look on his face. And then I just said to him, but what if we used chemical weapons? And he did not find it funny, but I thought it was funny. So
I don't know. I remember from back in the day, it was always no first use. So
yeah, but
we wouldn't
they
be the
did.
first ones that used it, but no promises after that.
They used it anyway. So the whole organization of it was really cool, and it is something that I hope gets to be done again because there was much more of a push towards bringing all your toys and putting them on the table. People could bring multiple types of lists. There was this kind of fun gamey aspect to it where you got to decide what you put on the table at a different time and how different teams did affected what happened in the next round. So it was a close run thing in the middle, but the defenders did pretty well on all the tables. Mitch did a great job getting them set up. They were like extra long, which I think really helps the whole Team Yankee narrative because all the weapon systems have such ranges that it's rare on a 6x4 table that you're ever out of range of anything. So it was refreshing to have a table that was big enough to play the stuff on it. The list for 55 points, I thought that was great because it discouraged some of the huge, bulldozing shenanigans that you can sometimes see. And people brought a pretty wide variety of balanced stuff, except for Ben Hodler, who brought like nothing but T-72s and T-55s because that's what he had. But
that's what you have on hand, right?
That's what you have.
You got to bring. Yeah.
We had a great game in round 2 against him because I did bump into 2 former Marines who were intrigued by it, were excited about it, and I taught them the game in the first round, and then we paired them off with other people, and they got a chance to play with like ringer armies.
So those are the demo games you were running. I saw the pictures of those.
Yeah, those are the
Facebook.
pictures. Those are the 2 new guys. And Battlefront, to their credit, also gave these guys like a big discount at the store. So I think
Nice.
that all of them went down and bought their first armies for the game, which is really cool.
Did they buy
They both go
Marines?
USMC. Oh, see, I was exactly.
I purposely
sure
picked
they're-
up. So I'll tell you a couple of great Mitch Reed stories that I can embarrass him with, since he's not here to stop me. He shamed me, appropriately so, for not getting enough prize support. Right. So like I'm a teacher, I'm trying to be fair all the time, and he sent me down to the Battlefront booth at the host. And he said, get a bunch of prize support. You need 7 prizes because there's 7-person teams. And so I went to try to get stuff that was blisters, and that wasn't the huge boxes that were pricier. And because I was trying to be like, I don't know, a gentleman about it. And I came back up with like a bunch of dice tins, a couple of the supplemental books, like the checks and the polls. I tried to get some cool stuff because I wasn't sure, if you're giving it to NATO or if you're giving it to the Warsaw Pact guys, or what kind of things people would want. I didn't want to go with big ticket items like some of the huge boxes that are super pricey. So I just grabbed a few things that I could. I got mostly dice, and I got extra Marine dice in case those guys won, because I wanted to see if I could sneak some Marine dice to them. And then when I got up, Mitch gave me this look, and he's like, "Why didn't you take the bigger boxes?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're supposed to just keep grabbing boxes until he tells you, no, you can't take that box." And so they, yeah.
Yeah. No moderation allowed.
Yeah, I was too moderate. But so if Battlefront's listening to us, I promise I'll try to take more of your product next time, and then you can feel free to yell at me for it and correct me. And then I'll be like, "You were right. I was far too greedy," and I'll correct my behavior. But I was negotiating against myself, so I'm going to take the L on that one. Mitch also, I'm going to blame Mitch for this, because Mitch, we shared a hotel room, and we both snore. And Mitch kept me up because he got me intrigued by Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I had never seen before. And if you've seen this movie, there is one scene that we will avoid describing in depth because of its explicit nature.
That's great.
And we literally, like, you're with Mitch when the second you turn on the TV, that is the moment that was on screen. Like, he had choreographed it and talked to the cable company. And after that, I felt like I had to watch it. So I was up till like 2 a.m. on Thursday night before this, but the movie was better than expected. So there's so many people in that movie.
That's old school.
Yeah. So I think the whole weekend went well. I also, this is not related to Oil Wars, but they did a demo for Blood and Plunder, and I bought an entire Dutch army because, I want to paint dudes with orange sausage and yell at people in Dutch, because it's the most incomprehensible language possible, and I want to buy a pirate ship and wear a pirate hat.
Did you try their demo games for the new, the smaller scale multi-ship battles?
No, they didn't have that when I was down there. I think they were running them on
Cruel
Friday.
Seas or the Leviathan one?
No, this is for the sailing ships.
It's called Blood and Iron?
Blood and Iron or something like that, yeah, or Oak and Iron.
Man.
Or Blood.
That'd be
Oak
totally
and
up my
Iron.
alley.
Oak and Iron. It's like the small scale 1 to 300 little pirate ships.
Yeah,
I didn't get
that's
to
really
try
cool.
that.
Cool.
Didn't get to try that. But they did. Yeah, they did the demo of the regular stuff, and I bought a starter army for that, and the rules, and the supplements. So I talked to Mitch, and I'm going to start using my foam sculptor to make like pirate gear and like rocks and cliff faces and things. We're going to try to put on a little mini event at Historicon on Saturday. So if what goes according to plan goes, I would be helping my friend run a Spanish Civil War 28 mil game on Thursday. My friend Greg. I'd be running Team Yankee with whoever's helping me run it Friday, and then I'd be running an event for Blood and Plunder on Saturday. So I would be doing more GMing than I've ever done in my life. So it was a really fun weekend. I'm glad I went. I'm really thankful for the people that came out and did a narrative event, and I hope we can get to do it again.
Yeah. How many people participated?
I think in the end we had like 16.
Oh, good.
And then the next day was the team tournament, which had low signups, but then a bunch of people walked in. So I think they had like 10 teams and 20 people, which is solid. And Kurt Reese put on that one.
Work kept me from going to that, so I'm already booked for Historicon.
I'm psyched.
Nice.
I want to see you down there. It's been a while. And I
Yeah,
don't have any
I miss
weddings
you
yet.
guys.
I don't have any
I'm
weddings for Canadian nationals, Matt Varnish.
Yeah, we're having a big family reunion in July, so I will not be able to hit Historicon for what third year in a row now or something. So
Mm.
yeah,
Well,
I'll be
we'll have
there
to catch you falling then.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
2020 or Fallen too, sure.
But you are going to another big con, even if you can't go to
Yeah.
Historicon. So, Tom, why don't you
Yeah.
chat about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's Adepticon, and by the time this is posted, Adepticon will be underway, if not completed. It's this weekend up in Chicago, so I'm geared up to play in the Flames of War event. Well, first off, the Team Yankee event on Friday, and I think there's over 30 players in that. I was looking at the list on the Battlefront forum the other night, and then the Flames of War event has got something like 58 players. So it's they had to they completely filled up at 48, and I think had to ask for additional tables and filled those up as well. So pretty psyched about that. The part that surprises me about the Flames of War event is it's late war using the early war, late war conversions. And I didn't think there'd be that much popularity or that much interest in it, as we're right around the corner from getting it late war ginned up with the version 4 rules properly. So I'm psyched for both. I'm going to be running British rifles in the Flames of War event, and using some things like breaching groups, which may or may not be around much longer. And a group. Well, I have two of them, and then I'm using the figures I've been using for the British are the Guards rifles, the metal ones, which are like my all-time favorite Battlefront casting. So I finally finished that force off, and I mean, I have a lot of British armies and a lot of British rifle units, but I always use my mid-war rifles and late war, the Italy guys with the shirt sleeves rolled up and all that kind of look.
Those guys are great.
I loved them, and I still use them too. But now I finally have a proper Northwestern Europe British late war force, so very excited to roll those out.
How many points is that?
Oh shoot, 1625. It took me a minute because we have to use all the weird conversions with minusing out
all the redundant teams
and all that jazz. I was like, 16 something. Oh wait, it's right. It reduced down to 1625. So that'll be good. And
what are you running for the Team Yankee? You doing Marines again?
No. I'm doing Soviets.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm doing Soviets mostly because all my effort and focus has been Flames of War. So I'm essentially running the same Soviet list I ran last year at Adepticon. I think I'm just adding 10 more. I think we're 60 points last year, so I just added a few units and rolling with that. So I will probably do equally as mediocre as I did last year with them. But
are you rocking T64s? What are you running? BMP?
Oh no, it's BMPs and mechanized battalion with a company of BMP ones, company of BMP twos, a bunch of support stuff. And then the support is an East German T-55 battalion, which really is super small. It's like nine T-55s or 10 T-55s. It's pretty minimal.
Yeah, it's the little 7.1, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the support formation's 14 points total with the support. They have a BTR-60 company, and which again is minimal size, and some scout and anti-aircraft assets. So that's pretty much what I ran last year, but the main focus is the Soviet group. So that'd be cool. And I'm going to be linking up with, of course, a lot of friends there from mostly the central portion of the country. But my best friend from my active duty service, Chris Grau, a guy that I met my first day in the Army. We went through basic together. We went to the first unit of assignment together, served there for 4 years, and we've stayed in touch all these years. So he's coming down. He's playing in both tournaments. So I'm really looking forward to hanging with him. And yeah, that is going to be super cool. So pumped. And I guess I get to meet Sylvia from one of our NDNG staff members. So she's going to be running around doing interviews and so on. So hopefully I'll get a chance to.
As we record this, she's been taking pictures. She's been walking around before the con starts, and she's well prepared. So I'm excited to see all the stuff you guys get to do.
Was she part of the setup committee, or is just because I don't? I mean, they're not even actually officially open yet, are they? It's just they'll kind of prepping.
She might be. I don't know.
I think she is. But
You'll have to ask her, actually.
yeah, you can ask her.
No, she has so many connections out there. Who knows what kind of setup they got going on? But that's cool.
Speaking of tournaments, I will also give a brief plug. We might not get this out in time, and I think most people who are going, but Kirwan's Game Store in Catskill, New York is hosting a Northeastern Regional Tournament on Saturday, April 6th, and that is Mid-War 110.
Cool.
I can't go because I'm running the millionth Model United Nations thing on 2 separate days at 2 separate schools over the course of like 24 hours. So I can't go. But
Yeah,
many of my friends
I like how you bumped it up to 110 from 109. Well done. 1 point.
Yeah, that 1 point buys you that observer or that Honey
Yeah.
Stewart you so desperately needed.
Very cool.
The difference
And,
between victory and defeat.
one event that also has come up in our AO, our area of operations, my local game store, Hard Knocks Games, they're going to be hosting the Mid-War Nationals. So that's going to be about a month later, like mid-May. I think it's the 18th and 19th of May, and I think they're doing the 109 standard. And so we'll see how many folks we can get. It's a big store; they have a lot of capacity. So anybody who's got easy access to the Louisville, Kentucky area, it should be a pretty good event. So we're excited to have a nationals event come to our local game store. It's kind of a big deal for us.
That's cool, man.
All right, so mark the time. It is, just so I can see, it is 16 minutes. All right, so I'll make a note for Sean to post it in when we post it up, that if people don't want to hear about all the tournament stuff and they want to jump straight to this, they can jump straight to all the oil war stuff. So you're talking to all 3 of the writers here, and we're going to start with the Israelis. So Iron Tom, give us your impressions, things you liked, things you didn't like. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I came into this project pretty much convinced that I was going to just jump in, neck deep right off the bat with doing Israeli force, because I have been playing Israelis in the various incarnations of Fate of a Nation, and so was pretty excited about the possibility of some of that kit migrating forward and a chance to kind of keeping with that theme, that same kind of army. So they've done a good job with it. Battlefront. But I got to say, manage expectations up front here. I'm less excited than I was. I'm still going to do an Israeli force. I have a local friend who has T-62s that he wants to run around as Syrian/Iraqis, possibly, whatever other options. But I'm not going to get into the Israelis as a competitive force. I'm just going to do it because I think the models are cool, Merkavas and Perez and some of the other neat stuff. But I got to think, if you're going into this thinking the Israelis are going to be this killer force, I mean, they're good. They're fearless. They have good kit. They have some interesting stuff. But I think, at least in the current rule set, they're going to suffer. They have small tank platoons, 3 tank platoons max, three tanks per platoon max. There's only 3 platoons in a formation of tanks. You get an additional mech infantry, which is only going to be M113. We can come back to that later on. And you get some standard NATO kind of support with the mortars and the artillery and some of the things. Tow jeeps are one thing that's kind of unique to them. And the PRE, which we'll get into here in a minute, it's very unique to it. But overall, I mean, it's fine. I just don't look at this force and think that it's going to be just absolutely dominating. And I wasn't looking for it to do that, but I think right now it's going to struggle. It has the same problems that all expensive tank forces have. And then when it comes to the infantry side of the house, they just don't have the options. They don't have the additional Milans, like additional Milan platoons, additional Milans per platoon. The guided missile that the infantry has is the Dragon, and they've only got 1 per platoon. And I just kind of think, well, if you really want to play a good, solid infantry force, there's better options. And if you really want to play a tank force, there's equally as good options. So unless you just really like the Merkava cool factor, and whether you really just want to try this kind of unique item, the PRE with a non-line of sight weapon, and talk about that in a minute, it just doesn't reach out and grab me like I was hoping it was going to.
So let me cut in and make a comment and ask a question. So the first comment I'll make would be, I think a lot of the people that would want to build this force are the people that we're going to build it regardless of like how
Yeah.
great the kit is in terms of the game rules. Because if you're somebody who's interested in modern combat, if you're somebody who is interested in kind of staging scenarios, like this is a cool book. And I think that it gives you the framework to kind of build a historical circumstance the way you want it. I think that the people that are going to enjoy this book the most are the people that aren't like gunning for the top tier of a tournament. They just want to play, games that are themed from this era in this region. So like I'm tempted to build the Israelis, but I mostly on the virtue of the cool tank and the desert theme and stuff like that. The other
I've
thing
got a question, if I may interject. And Tom would be the best because Tom and I are just dirty civilians here, but the fact that the Israelis have very little infantry, is that doctrinal? Because is that just how they ran their forces because of the lack of manpower because the country's so small?
No, they have proper balances of formations. When you go look at the brigade and division organization, they had a lot of tank divisions. Israel was the third largest tank force in the world at this period. So they did have a lot of armored formations, but even in a tank division, the majority generally still is infantry.
Okay. I was just curious as to whether or not it was like okay, no, this is how they were, and I just had to ask. Whether or not that was the case.
They didn't include another thing that was kind of missing, I thought, was the Israeli paratroopers and other Israeli infantry. I mean, there's only that one option, the M113 mech option.
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be more Israeli expansions in the future, maybe a pamphlet or just a...
You do them with allies? Like, could you maybe supplement what you think is missing with some allies, perhaps? I don't know.
Sure. You could bring in the 82nd, 101st Airborne, or even Marine list and just run those as Israelis and to kind of simulate or approximate Israeli airborne if you wish. So that's an option for you.
So here's the question I had that kind of relates to the rules. And this is kind of relating to all the other lists as well. So a pattern in the tank lists in particular that Dennis Matt Varnish points out is that these are very bare bones formations, tank-wise, right? And Tom, you mentioned that the rules as constituted are going to have an effect on this when you compare them to the rules as they will eventually be revised. So
we think. So
like when you look at the small tank platoon, right? You have a 3-tank platoon. Under the version 4 Flames of War rules, as soon as you get down to 1 tank, you're re-rolling its motivation every turn, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
With the Team Yankee rules, you only take the morale check once when you drop down below, and then you don't take it again, right?
You take that test at the end of the shooting step. Like you don't in Flames of War version 4, you get the chance to remount, then you test. Whereas right now, it's at the end of the shooting step, you just have two bailed Magatches and you have one left. Well, that one's rolling right now. They don't get a chance to get in. So you're right, where the 3-tank platoons may get better in the future.
Does that help them or hurt them under these rules?
No, it'd be good because their remounts so strong. They have, remounts on 3+ and 2+ with the commanders.
It hurt the Czechs and other armies like that.
But if you're down to 1 tank, you're doing it every time. So I'm wondering if, even though you get to remount early, the Israelis are likely to be down to that last tank more often.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the Brits are in the same position too with their 3 chieftain troops.
And honestly, I'm not worried about them running. I'm just worried about being completely blown away. I mean, that's I'm not concerned about the morale check. I'm just concerned that it's only 3 tanks and only takes 3 good Sagers or 3 good Spandrels to take them out.
Well, Sagers can't touch Merkavas, not the twos.
But I also say that like you mentioned, Dennis, that these are all the formations for the armor in particular. There's not really anything integrated in there. Like if
compared to the other lists,
compared to Stripes or Red Dawn, the big bulky NATO and Soviet Warsaw Pact lists, they enmesh it all. In here, you have to take a ton of support, which makes it a different situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the formation only has 3 platoons of tanks, 1 platoon of mech, and then 1 recon choice, and then your headquarters. So you're looking at 5 units, 6 with a headquarters, and that's it.
And the mech infantry is the reverse. You get 2 to 3 mech
Yep.
one tank, you can get the armored mortars or the anti-tank section. You know what I wonder, and I'll just interject real quick. I wonder if this means this is the way Battlefront wants Team Yankee going forward, and they'll, God forbid, they'll redo those other books with the massive formations. But I think maybe those massive formations are just staying in the game because people are taking the little cheap units. And then now, maybe this is what they're looking forward to. I don't know. That's just
Well, one thing that puzzles me as we transition, which I believe is the end of this year, right? Isn't
I think so. It's October.
Supposed to be October. Yeah.
So we have these ratings for the command elements, the company, formation HQs that have the increased morale, but don't allow the rerolls. The adjacent units get to use the higher command's morale ratings.
Right.
And when we go to rerolls, or it goes back to version 4, if they go to pure version 4, then will these ratings all stay the same? Will they all have that 2+,
who knows?
Or whatever, elevated higher level command? So is it? It's going to be kind of hard to use these books and cards going forward with just a new rule set if they try to do something different. So
plus, they still grant the reroll to adjacent units, but they retain their higher stats for themselves.
Correct.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
so just for the sake of being a little complete, because I know we're not going to go through every piece of equipment that they have, because for those of you that have already gotten earlier books and have a general idea of what some of these formations look like, or you've read the articles, Tom, just briefly tell them specifically what formations are available for the Israelis.
Yep. So you basically have 3 different tank formations, and Merkava 1, Merkava 2, and the M60, later being my preference. And then you have the M113 mech infantry as a formation option. And that's it for the moment. There's not no paratroopers or no additional. And then you get a bunch of options for support, and you can also take the allied formations like Dennis was suggesting. You want to put airborne troops, put some Marines in there or something like that.
Like the Gephards.
yeah. So and then the support options are also pretty moderate. So if you're playing a high points level event, especially if it's limited to a single formation, the tanks are still relatively expensive, so I guess you can fill out your points on tanks, but man, it's just,
I've got a buddy who's going lots of Merkavas just to Skyhawks instead of A4s. I think he's going to go for the cool looking F4s with like that 3-tone camo.
Nice. Yeah.
Ooh, that's cool.
In the 70s. Oh yeah, it looks slick.
Yeah.
So Tom, let me ask you a question. What is the visual difference between the Merkava 1 and 2? Is it just the gun?
No, the same gun. It's some bit of armor, and I honestly, looking at the models, I can't tell. There's no way I could do a AFVID on these things out in the field and be able to distinguish between a Merkava 1 or Merkava 2. It's and looking at the models, I can't tell the difference either.
Could never tell the difference between the Chieftain with steel brew or not, the British one either. So it just went by.
You can probably build them whichever version you want and just call it whichever. I know it has different pieces.
Although they've got the hanging chains around the turret rings, that's super cool that they included that.
Yeah,
that is cool. The models are cool.
Yeah, that's such a little minor looking thing though. Like, some chains hanging from the back. That's what tells me it's a Merkava too. Like, okay. So they are. They're there, and that's about the only visual difference I see. And I think there's some slight hull piece difference or something, but I just
like a different glasses or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the later one with the 120, you'll be able to tell. But
something else I'd point out about Merkava, it's only 1819. So the armor's really good, and the tank will be able to punch any of its competitors in this book, but some of the heavier tanks it's going to have a problem with.
Right. They're not modeling with like the tungsten fin stabilized. They're not using the super high end ammunition from Central Europe.
The Israelis didn't need to worry about that with their local enemies, right? They're like, all we need to do is penetrate second-rate T-72s. All right, so it's good enough.
Well, not even much of those. The majority of them were T-55s and T-62s. Yeah. T-72s were kind of like the Republican Guard and elite units. They weren't the main battle tanks. No. So there's more than adequate. And then they got missiles for when they're needed. They still have the tows and all that other stuff for the tanks that when they'll be required.
So there is some kit that you can use from Fate of a Nation, but
not much.
Not much.
The M60s you could use, but in Fate of a Nation they're super expensive, so you probably don't have that many of them. But if you wanted a force that's going to drift back and forth, M60s is the way to go. And then
tow jeeps, I think, cross over too, don't they?
Yeah, tow jeeps are there, of course. Yeah, some of the other ADA stuff, the Skyhawks are there. There's significant chunks of stuff you could get by, and I think you'd want to go with the Oil War infantry, mech infantry, and then just be ready to swap out the 113s for the half tracks, and then get rid of the Dragon and the RPGs. And you should be able to neck it down into a reasonable Fate of a Nation force. But my problem's the opposite. I have the Fate of Nation stuff, so now I have. Can I just buy Dragon teams? Can I just get RPG teams? Can I just get these things, these other editions? But probably not. Probably not. Have to get whole new platoons and redo them. So, yeah, and I will. But it's just I was hoping for a little bit, and there are some things that are missing too. They weren't frontline tanks at this time, but the shot, the
Tyrian?
Yeah, the Tyrian, the Blazer one, Tyrian, they were still out there in significant numbers, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I wouldn't think they're frontline units. They may have been reserve units, and they might have slightly different stats and so on. But I guess the problem with those is they'd have to have reactive Blazer armor on them, and I don't think we're at that point where Battlefront's ready to throw reactive armor into the game yet. So they're just kind of left out for the moment. So there's a lot of potentials for the Israelis to expand in the future, both with the old kit coming up and then some of the other stuff we talked about, like airborne forces.
So the Tyrian Blazer, that's a T-55 with ERA blocks, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and 105 gun. They retubed it with a standard 105. And then the shot, there's a Cal Dalit shot that was same thing, the last version of the Centurion with the reactive armor.
Well, Israel is a big believer in recycling.
Yeah, and then maybe we could get some of the newer stuff where they took some of these older hulls and turned them into armored personnel carriers and did some other interesting conversions. I mean, they didn't throw anything away. They just repurposed stuff over and over again.
I think there's a lot of potential to do a cool army just like that, Tom. I think that would be awesome.
Well, I'm definitely still doing an Israeli force. Don't mistake me. I'm still going to do this mostly for my local friends, so we can do some scenario gaming and some other cool stuff. But this is not going to be my go-to army to take to a competitive event. It's just going to be an army that I want to have and have some good time with, like you mentioned earlier.
All right, so Matt, let me get some digs in on your nations before you introduce them. Do you want to talk about the only country in the 20th century that has conducted 98% of the chemical weapons attacks? Or do you want to talk about the first people to inspire United Nations unity in a counterattack against a hostile foreign power?
Well, where do I begin? So what's weird about the Iraqi list? No, I'm going to review the Iraqis, but I'm not playing the Iraqis. I'm going to be playing the Syrians, who are, they're the bad guys. I mean, whatever. They're the bad guys. And to be fair, I think their list is terrible if you take them as just Syrians. But I think they have the biggest potential on their own to be a cool wait.
I think the paint scheme that you have for them is really awesome, by the way.
Yeah, for my Syrians?
Oh
yeah. I still gotta finish them for the painting article. But I think the Iraqi list will see play just because it's so unique. You've got all this Soviet gear. Oh, they get NATO allies, and they get French gear too. It's just crazy. So in my article, when I did the Iraqi Syrians, I mentioned, and Tom Burgess talked about it, is when compared to some of the other lists, like Red Thunder, the East German list, like those formations are chock full of extra little units that can hide out. You can have left and some little unit of, BRDMs hiding in the back that can keep your formation, from rolling. Whereas in the Iraq or in the oil war lists, it's like I wasn't planning on running 30 T-55s, but I don't think 21 formation is enough. And in some old lists that I was kind of playing with, I'm like, what am I going to do? Like the East Germans, for example, they can take 2 in their battalion. They can take 2 units of T-55s, and the third can be T-72s.
Yeah, they got some variety in there. There's options for them.
Right. So
yeah, go ahead.
Are limited. Not only that, the East German T-55 is way better for way cheaper.
And you mentioned to me when we were talking before that like it's hard to you don't think we're going to see the likes of that T-55 East German list again?
Not with the 3 tank units. That's 2 points.
Okay.
I mean, that's just laughably moronic that you can have for 7 points D5s that are the stats that they are.
Yeah, a whole formation.
As a whole formation. And it's a perfect little allied formation. It's perfect. Like, Warsaw back players, you'd be an idiot to not use them, right? But the Iraqi T-55, you have to pay for the bazooka skirts. You don't get the rangefinder. The gun is worse. The armor is worse. And you pay more points for them.
Yeah.
That's the way forward. So, but I mean, still, why not going with the good French kit that goes with Iraq or with their the crazy NATO allies? I can't tell you how tempted I was to do side allied formation and have Gepards, because the Jordanians did have Gepards. Yes, it was after the scope of this, but I was like, desert Gepards.
Dennis, you can borrow my Gepards. I mean, I literally.
If I borrow your Gepards, I'm going to throw them into a furnace.
You don't want to do that. You got a package earlier that you didn't mention.
I did.
In our intro from a man whose last name was Gepard. Maybe you want to tell our listeners about the package you received?
Well, luckily, I was bitching and moaning that the one time I did come down to fall in for a Team Yankee tournament, and we were supposed to get the stripes. What is it? The EMC 50?
That's exactly. Yep.
The
EM.
Or the EM 50. Yeah, the EM 50 armored Barbie.
Yeah, urban assault vehicle or something.
Perfectly camouflaged Winnebago.
And they didn't have Battlefront didn't have them for when we did that event, and then because my work sent me to an away trip during Historicon, I couldn't go to that, so I missed out on the 2 opportunities to get one. But Tom was nice enough to mail me one. Who's opened it because it was in like a leaky pipe box that you had put in.
So I was desperate to mail this out to you quickly. And I didn't have a box.
Or you left from PC.
Yes, but I didn't have a box that fit it. And my plumber had left all these little parts boxes lying around. And I'm like, well, I'll just use this. And so I put the blister inside of this plumbing box. And then I just duct taped it shut like a 5-year-old trying to wrap their Christmas present.
You put John P. Gepard.
I put John P. Gepard on it as the return address. And then just shoved it in the mail like Homer Simpson trying to mail his tax returns. And apparently,
my wife gets it. So she goes, first of all, you just got a box from, it looks like Connecticut. And then I'm all like pumped because I know what it is. And she goes, from some guy named John P. Gepard, and Customs opened it. And I'm just like laughing. Because I knew exactly. I was like, that's Tom. Tom's being a jerk.
Yeah, Tom's being a jerk.
But thank you for sending me the EM50.
Welcome.
I was joking. I was like, "What did you do? Roll it around and shake it into a bag of cocaine so that the drug dogs would open it?" Customs won't open it.
Who knows what that plumber was doing when I wasn't paying attention to him? Because my whole heating system blew up. So he kept having to replace part after part, and he replaced the entire furnace. And so I think
it provided a box. So there we go.
There's resin. I think there's resin on everything, and that's also one of the key ingredients in a pipe bomb. So unbeknownst to me, I sent you the most threatening package possible from John P. Gepard,
and they probably looked up John P. Gepard, and that didn't exist.
It did not exist.
Fake name.
Fake name. Fake name.
I might actually have Honest Ahmed from my little diorama that I made for Canadian Nationals and for Fallen that one time with the captured Emporium.
Yes.
So I have Honest Ahmed. He was going to be selling a goat other objective, but now that I've got the EM50, I might just strap a whole bunch of stowage on top of it and have him trying to sell or like a used RV. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the objective. Yeah. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's go back to Iraqis.
So tell us
where there's limitations.
Yeah, so tell us the limitations and tell us the things that are like big positives for them.
Well, big positives is numbers. Stuff is still pretty cheap. I mean, the T62s are, for 10 of them, it's only 4 points more than a T55. It's the same armor, which is crappy. It's the same skill, which is whatever. But you get a better gun. So for 4 points for 10 models, that's a bargain. And so for those folks that don't already have T55s by the dozens, you should probably go
T62.
Go lots of T62s. You get 2 units of BMP ones. That the formations are pretty light in terms of other units. For the tank formations, you want a maxed out unit of BMPs in there, or if you're going to go with the BTRs slash AMXs slash Milans.
A maxed out T62 formation would be 31 T62s for about 46 points. 47.
And then and then you put in, I think it's a whopping 14 points for the 12 BMPs and all the RPGs that are in it. Or the BTRs are cheaper, but then you upgrade them to AMX 10Ps, and then you have Milans. So they're really good in that respect.
Yeah, did you have to upgrade to the... Can you take Milans also anyways? I thought there was an option just to take the Milans on their own.
No.
With the BTRs. No, so you have to go... The Milans have to go with the AMX.
You have to... Let me read it again. Company mounted in AMP 10s may remove Milan. Oh yeah, you know what? You're right.
Yeah. So yeah.
AMX 10.
Okay, so you're right. It's only if you have AMX 10Ps you can put the Milans on the AMXs. You're right. You can have Milans
with the BTRs.
Yeah, that's even better.
Okay.
Yeah, shorter range, but more fire. More destructive power.
For the low price of 1 extra point. It's great.
Correct. Yeah. It's not bad.
No, Milans are a terror. And it's weird that they put it, well, I don't know if it's weird, but they put them on the large base. I kind of thought when they started talking about Milans that they would be like the NATO Milans, but nope, they'll be on the large base like the
on the mega base. Yeah. But you do get three shots pumping out, but I mean, one unlucky hit and you're losing 3 missiles.
Yeah, and if you're pinned, it's 1 shot.
Yeah. So, and one thing I got to mention as well is the infantry. If you're used to Soviet infantry who have RPG 18s and underslung grenades, well, you don't have any of those. So the Iraqi/Syrian infantry plus, when they're shooting their rifles, they don't have the inherent RPG 18s that every other squad has, except for the Poles, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they, so they only have RPGs. Same points as you are for Czechs. So again, it's in terms of the points. Yeah, it's weird. Like, because it has this plus allies has an absolute metric ton of potential because they're NATO. Right. You can take A10s. You can, there's all sorts of weird stuff you can take. So in that respect, this list is going to be good in terms of, hey, I've got these models. I just want to run them. Run them. It's just, if you want to run them as pure Syrians, you're really, really gimping yourself. Go over the Syrians is the exact same list as the Iraqi list, except for instead of the French gear, your Warsaw Pact, so you can have Warsaw Pact allies. I guess. But you can take Syria did have gazelles. I know that Israel did capture some Syrian gazelles, so you could run captured Syrian gazelles as your cobras if you really wanted to run gazelles.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool just for model variation.
When they used them, they didn't even repaint over the Syrian roundel on the tail. They just added a Star of David next to it. There's
wow.
Photos of them.
Just a little sticker right on top of it, right?
No, right next to it. So it's like, wait a minute, whose are these?
They do that so it would be confusing.
So here's a
Yeah.
question for the two of you, because you're both Fate of a Nation players, and Matt, you've been looking at this for a long time, and Tom, you've been playing this. So, like, why do you think there's no Jordanians? Is that like a silly question? But I saw it popped up on the forums, and I thought to myself, yeah, where's
Well,
Jordan?
was it King Hussein married Grace Kelly? So there you go. That's why.
Yeah.
They became quite well. King Hussein's son, the current king, he got sent to the U.S. He went to the United States Army's officers school for armor officers, and so they were normalizing relations quite a bit, and also, quite frankly, were tired of getting their butts kicked, I imagine. So they were trying to lean far more Western. So I imagine that they're just not interested in playing in this one.
Huh.
I'm sure Andy Thompson is going to make a cool Jordanian list, and it better have Gepards.
He,
That's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
and he's a man at that. His Turkish list is awesome. I'll give a plug for that because I thought it was really good.
Oh man, his lists are cool.
Yeah, the Jordanians were using British tanks, but and they still were. I trained with the 91st Royal Jordanian Armor Brigade, and they had Challengers at that time, but and they kept with that. You see that even in Fate of a Nation, they have the Centurions and a lot of the British rifle looking formations and so on. So they
They have cool
maintain
paint jobs. I don't know why they have that really. I think it's reflective green from Vallejo is the color used. It's really sweet looking.
Yeah, very very cool.
That's why I'm doing Syrians, because they're the gunship green with the desert yellow is just it's just so cool looking.
It's really pretty.
And my very first war game that's who I was playing when I think I was 10. These army dudes let us, kind of look at this huge, and it was an Israel versus situation, and the first models I ever pushed across the tabletop were BTRs. So it's all circling back.
Circling back.
Very nice. They're like, here, kid, here's some wheeled trucks. Go over here and don't get blown up.
Oh yeah, totally.
I seem to remember that being something similar to my first war game experience. Here you go, kid. You just kind of push these guys around the flank and try not to get run over.
But you know what? Almost 40 years later, here I am still doing it. So
yeah, same with me. Hooked. Totally hooked.
Yeah.
I'm a late bloomer.
So, so just to wrap up, because I don't want to get too far off the rails here. Stuff. The Syrians, not so much. It's just more of the same. Iraqis also get allied to NATO stuff. And they're allied to the same old. I mean, interesting Warsaw Pact nation they can ally with is the Iranians, to be fair.
There we go.
I'm certainly not eager to go out and paint any sort of desert Soviet-looking force. I have a ton of Soviets already, and but I've run my Soviets in Fate of the Nation as Egyptians frequently. And one of the things that kind of intrigues me is that as a possible variation of a Soviet force using the Central Europe, Central Front type formation, something like the VCR Hot, that anti-tank platoon that has Hammerhead, which is a really cool thing to add to a Soviet type force. I was thinking, well, why can't I just proxy in my storms and use?
You were reading my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something I'd like to.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
I was thinking I don't think too many people mention it, but in Oil War, at the very end of Oil War, is the Soviet T-62M formation. The thing you could use to buff up, like you can have your regular T-62s. Here's the the Revolutionary Guard or the Republican Guard or whatever you want to call them. The elite have the extra gear, so they have the side skirts and all that.
Cool.
There's a ton of different units. It's just the way the Soviets did it was just we did and just mass produce them, so that you're not going to get the huge variety that you would for. I'm going to mix in these Dutch things here and these West German things here, and Warsaw Pact is always going to be stuck with that, except for the Iranians.
Yes, so that's a good segue to the article I read. So for the first thing I'll say is there is a goof in it because I wasn't reading quite as close as I needed to, and I misread the AT on the Chieftain. They don't have the better upgunned British gun. They only have an AT of 20 as opposed to 22. The rest of the stuff I pretty much took into account. And some people who are discussing it, like on our platform or in the forums or on Facebook, were kind of bringing up different explanations that they saw for why the chieftains were pointed the way they were. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just briefly talk about Iran in general. So Iran is a happy place. um, in the timeline of our imaginary place, this is 85. So you're talking about a very short period after the Iranian-U.S. hostage crisis. So tensions with the United States would be at an all-time high. I'm sure that their regular chants of death to America are far more spirited than they are today. One of my favorite news articles from recently is when they're trying to talk about like the Iran deal. The newscasters have this great line where they're like, as we were listening in, their chants of death to America didn't seem as excited. And you're just like, oh, okay. Oh, well,
Not properly motivated.
in that case. So the reason that the Iranians have the kit that they do is because the Shah and British Petroleum and the Americans have been selling the Iranians their equipment. But the Soviets have also taken up the mantle as soon as, the well ran dry when the Iranian Revolution shut the door on its Western sellers. So the formations that you have are a chieftain formation, the Pattons, the M60s, the T62s. You have a mechanized company, which has a lot of options in it in terms of transports it can take, similar to the Iraqis. And then last, the juiciest of the insanity would be the Basaji Infantry Battalion. And I'm probably mispronouncing that because I don't speak Arabic and I'm just, I'm a monolingual fool. So just talk about the chieftains first. These are absurdly cheap. And I know that there are people who have chatted about it and sort of see their reasons. So things that have been pointed out in terms of the differences to British kits. And I'm rehashing some of the stuff that's in the article that I wrote now. They can't dash as fast, so they're not as quick. They have a worse gun. They're hit on a 3. Their skill is a 5+. Their assault is a 5+. So they're not going to be making a lot of blitz moves. They're not going to be making a lot of shoot and scoot moves. That's not what they're for anyway. And the other tricky thing that kind of limits them is a full chieftain formation is 3 platoons plus the HQ. And those 3 platoons can only field 3 tanks apiece.
Yeah,
so despite their cheap points, the most you could take in a full out formation would be 10 tanks, right? So it's 9,
well, 10,
11 if you took 2 in the HQ. So that is a limitation, and
you take 3 of those formations, though.
Yes, correct.
Well, maybe it depends. What if you go to an event that's like, okay, no more than 2 formations?
No, I'm just saying in the Force org, I know the East Germans are limited. I think you can only have 3 tank formations total. This you can have 3 chieftain formations, 3 M60 formations, and 3 TC2 formations if you want to run like a 1,000-point game.
Correct.
You're not as limited.
And 3 Basjis.
Yeah, and then you can take all the Basajis. So the chieftains are pretty effective, but their gun isn't as good, and that makes a huge difference because the difference between AT-20 and AT-22 is a big deal. So they unquestionably should be cheaper than their British counterparts, but I don't think that they should be quite this cheaper.
I agree with you 100%.
So, and look, I'm no expert. I'm not a tournament champion. I'm Captain Lose in the tournament circuit as far as I'm concerned for the last year. And but I still like to play competitively, and I like to do the competitive list building. But this is going to be tricky to find the antidote to. I think one of the things that is, for me, a frustrating element of the game, and I'm hoping that they fix it when they revise the artillery rules, is getting rid of dug-in infantry is awfully difficult because the artillery rules in Team Yankee are a weird hybrid between old version 3 and new version 4. So teams still get a bonus from being gone to ground. If you're outside of visual, you get another +1. The modifiers add up. And even if I'm trying to dig out Soviet infantry in a huge blob, as long as they stay set and still, I might still be hitting them on a 5. and they're also not re-rolling their saves if I'm repeating a bombardment. And those things make a big difference. So I think that realistically, the counter to this would be a pile of French Milan teams, dug in British infantry. But still, this is an enormous amount of tanks.
Cheap.
The M60s have the same thing. They are limited to an 11 tank full formation, but again, you could take 3 of them. And the T62s. So the stats on the T62s, since you mentioned to me, Matt, that this is the first time that this particular version of the T62 is out, is that correct? For Team Yankee and Modern?
Team Yankee, yeah. So they've been out in Fate of a Nation. These are the without all the extra add-ons.
Yeah, the old ones, the initial
ones from the
ones.
60s, yeah.
So the T62s are 4 points for 3 tanks. You can also throw in a platoon of T55s if you happen to have one lying around, and I feel like a lot of people will, if they are Warsaw Pact players. Front 13, side 9, top 2. It does not have any bazooka skirts or anything on it, which was a question that I saw on the forums.
At least the gun is brutal.
Yeah.
Rangefinder, and it is slow firing.
It is slow firing.
But it's 18-19 at least. The T55 is way worse.
Yeah, the T55.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. So, I mean, the T62, your big benefit is that they're cheap. They're so cheap.
The gun's okay.
The gun's okay.
Yeah.
It's like a Leo 1 gun, you know? It's not like a Leo 1 gun because it's halted, rate of fire 1, moving 1, and slow firing. So you need to get a pile of these together to rip something up. And it's not
because it's so cheap, you can get a pile of other stuff. That's the thing.
Correct, yeah. You can afford to easily take a T62 formation and then take the real star of the show, because the star of the show, and I'm going to skip talking about the mechanized company. The mechanized company can take a lot more integrated support than any of its tank company counterparts. And I think it's much more likely to be durable and stick around. So
I was surprised to see the M113 with the recoilless on them.
Yeah.
I didn't think they had them. That's really cool.
That is cool.
Or you can take the M150.
1817.
So you can take either M113s, BTR 60s, or the BIMP ones. And it's
crazy.
You jump around. But the star of the show, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the most unique thing in here, is the Basagi Infantry Battalion. You can take 4 companies of these guys. And I talked to James Copeland about this because he he showed me just what they're capable of taking with them. So if you pair a tank formation with this, which is likely what a player would want to do, then they have to make a choice. They have to decide if they're going to try to stop the infantry that are getting really close really fast because of some rules that we'll talk about momentarily, or they have to get rid of the dozens of tanks that are littering the table that are just good enough to be really annoying against anything but a first generation main battle tank. Like against a Leo 2, these things are going to have trouble, but the Leo 2s are 11 points. And for 11 points, I can essentially take an entire formation, So in that case, I don't know that it evens out. Like, is one Leo 2 firing going to be enough to kill 8 T62s?
And this is where when people are saying, "Oh no, the Iranians, the chieftains, they're not that undercosted," they're undercosted by themselves, but with something like this, the synergy is they're way undercosted. So
let's just dig into this for a second, and then you can go off on it. So
it's mental.
The Basagi Infantry Company, if I take, this is 4 of these I can take. If I bulk out that company / platoon, because we're using the Russian terminology where the platoon is a company because there's so many of them. So these guys are your Death or Glory guys who are dressed up in the green bandanas. They would do human wave attacks during the Iraq-Iran war. It's pretty awful. 25 AKM assault rifle teams and 12 RPG-7 anti-tank teams. So you have 37 infantry stands for 22 points.
Multiplied by 4.
Multiplied by 4.
Well,
And then you
that's 88
take
points if you take all 4.
Yeah, take them all. Even
And
if
you
you
have
took
99 stands if you take all 4.
2. Holy God.
I got 99 stands.
And if it ain't one,
Nice. Very nice.
I
Solid.
take that.
I had to throw that in there.
So let's talk about just how much these guys will creep up on you. So the rules for Basagi Assault say, before the start of the game, a player with a force that contains these may choose to do a Basagi Assault. If you're making it, units don't benefit from bulletproof cover, may not be placed in reserve. When a Basagi unit making an assault is placed on the table during deployment, but not if it is placed outside the normal deployment area using the spearhead rule, the player may immediately move its teams at tactical or dash speed. You may not use movement orders. You cannot get within 16 inches of an enemy team. It is not concealed from or within 8 inches of any enemy team or the deployment area. So effectively, these infantry get the scout move. Okay. And they get to zip
what's
right
clutch
up.
here is that pick. They don't have to. It's not all or nothing. It's oh, there's a lot of buildings. Maybe I want to keep my. I don't want to lose bulletproof cover. I think that's the biggest thing. Is it's not automatic. You can pick.
Right. They're martyr units, which means they're expected to die. So they may move 6 inches when charging into contact for an assault. So their threat range goes from what it would normally be to 8 inches. They're allowed to follow me right into range. Am I correct? So they could move 8, follow me 4. That's 12, and then charge 6.
Mm-hmm.
So that's their threat range.
Yeah. Do we have that 10-inch maximum tactical move for assaulting?
So then they'd only be able to follow me 2 inches, and they'd have a threat range of 16.
Still good.
It's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, they do try to take some of those Russian rules from mid-war and apply them to them. So to be fair, they are hit on a 3, and they don't have a normal infantry save. They have a 4-up infantry save. Yeah.
And they don't get bulletproof cover.
They don't get bulletproof cover if they're going suicidal, which is a big deal.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't adjust their victory points. Like you had to kill 2 of these units to count as 1, since they're expendable. But
like the Strath Company or something. But I think that'd be too much.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. So this is why when everybody's like, oh well, the chieftain, it's like no one's going to shoot at the chieftains because they've got these guys to worry about. Even if you only take 1.
No, these infantry are going to be assaulting you on turn 2. They're coming.
Yeah. Better bring your machine gun teams and template weapons. So.
Yeah, they are.
By
coming.
then, the chieftains have done their work. Yeah, this is why I think the Iranian list is super powerful, despite all the no, it's not so bad. It is pretty bad. I think this.
We're going to see
the card a little.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of this now.
Here,
one thing that I'll point out, because they have some interesting mixes of support. So you have the Hail rocket batteries, you have the ubiquitous 109 self-propelled artillery, but you also have Scorpions. You have some British stuff. There's all these little British touches from back when they were selling them stuff. But and I don't know what the meta is going to do when they change the rules. What's going to happen to air? Because in my experience, people have not been bringing fixed-wing aircraft because it seems like the AA is too good at shooting it down. The helicopters, I see those occasionally, but the Iranians, interestingly, they can take the Gecko as a Soviet piece of equipment, but I don't generally see a lot of those on the table. They can take the ZSU 57-2 AAs, which is not that great. Rate of fire 3, 18-9, 4-up, but it's
radar. No, it's great as a small, cheap anti-light infantry or light.
And they
vehicle.
can also take Shilkas, but they don't have some of the stuff that NATO has, where you have the Rapiers or
the Brits have those. So.
Or what else we got? Or the Gepards, no Gepards, or the Sergeant York, our favorite fictitious thing. So I think that their ability to shoot down fixed-wing aircraft is really limited, and their air support they have helicopters. They don't have any fixed-wing strike craft at all. So if it's me and I'm testing out lists to try to attack these dudes, I feel like I would start taking Hurricanes or tornadoes rather, or the Harriers. The Harriers are always good, especially
Big
if you're British
template,
anyway.
like big template on the Visage guys
Yeah,
would be pretty sweet.
and I think that the artillery is something that you don't bring in a lot of these Team Yankee matches because the current rules it's not that great. There are exceptions.
Might
but
going forward.
yeah, I think I'm needing to take the artillery because I need to get rid of these guys. It's too big a blob. I don't know how else to kill them all.
Yeah.
So
Definitely going to want the templates.
It's
And,
an interesting list. I just
Well, like the Brits still have that machine gun unit. Like the only one with a machine gun platoon still. Like, I guess I'll be bringing that now.
yeah,
dust
absolutely.
that off.
Yeah.
But I think Matt Varnish and I were joking with each other about how we expect to see a bunch of British painted chieftains magically becoming proxies
they're not
for
gonna be
Iranians.
This is going to be Proxy City at the big events there by the tryhards. Oh yeah,
And they'll probably be using Soviet World War II infantry stands. The masses.
Romanians. Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, Matt,
It'll be American. It'll be American painted Cobras, Russian ZSU 23s and Hinds. I don't know why these guys have tow jeeps too.
Well,
it is a
these
cool
guys,
list. They get They get everything.
The Iranians and the Iraqis just seem like they're there to let you just throw together kit as you wish.
Yeah, they are.
And Tom, you know how you were mentioning that you keep doing this UN thing with your students?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
UN force, and I think with the mix of kits, this is what you should do. And your Visage units are just dudes with blue berets, and they're not allowed to shoot unless they're shot at first.
Well, I know that
UN everywhere.
I have to talk to Rob Kelly, who's the friend of yours that you put me in touch with, who's super nice. Yeah. He sent me a lot of area pictures that gave me an idea of what the squads looked like when they were deployed.
Oh, when he was deployed.
Yeah, all the Canadians out there. I bought a peacekeeping book on Canadian peacekeeping operations. I got a book called Warmonger, which is written by the head of the United Nations peacekeeping operations from 1988 to 94, and then he burned out, gave up, because it was I'm interested in learning about the order of battle from the era. I want to do a list similar to what Andy did.
He's the guy that Bruce Willis played in that Rwanda movie.
Oh, seriously?
Based on his story.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Tears of something or other.
Tears of the Sun.
Yeah.
He was playing basically that character. Yeah, that guy's pretty well known in Canada.
No, he's great. So I'm excited to try to do a Bosnian peacekeeping force list, and this seems like it gives me the mix of kits that I would want. The tricky part of it from a design perspective is that there's a couple of gadgets and vehicles that they use that I know that it falls outside of the time period. There's the Warrior armored fighting vehicle that they had a ton of, but I feel like I can bash a kit together of an LAV and a Scorpion, right? It's basically what it is.
Rob's already made one. Well, actually, Scott made one for Rob because I think they called them the Warriors in Canada. I think they're called. It's either the Grizzly or the Cougar. It's a 6-wheeled LAV with a Scorpion turret, basically, with a couple different things.
You have one of those at the Canadian War Museum, don't you? I thought there was one.
Yeah, that's the one that hit an IED somewhere.
Yeah, cool. Don't you have a Grizzly and a Cougar both? Aren't they two different? I mean, in one with
one's a recce. Yeah, one's a recce version of the other. Yeah,
and the other one's more of a infantry fighting vehicle. Sort of. Yeah.
Well, I'll also say this for the Iranian and the Soviet kit, that the BP 60s, BTR 60s, and the BIMPs, at the Canadian War Museum, when you look in the back of that thing, I just think to myself, how on earth do you fit this many people inside of this gadget? And I think the one they had is a command one, but I'm were Russians that much shorter than me?
Yeah, they're pretty low.
That's the one that had a ground surveillance radar. It actually had a radar on it.
Wow. Because I'm 6'1", and I'm no, there's no way. It's not happening.
No, exactly. Yeah. And then the T-72 they have there, I can't remember where they got the Canadian War Museum T-72. I think it was an old East German one that they grabbed and just painted it as if it was. But yeah, that thing is tiny compared to the larger tanks.
Tom, let me
it's
just ask
tiny
you this.
compared to a Panther.
Yeah, Tom, let me ask you this. Like, in all the times that you like did your research or did training on different types of equipment, like, is there a huge discernible difference between the inside
Yes.
of a NATO? Just talk about
Yes.
it.
Yeah, they're not built for crew comfort. In fact, in the Soviet tank formations, there was a maximum height, and it was 5 something. You couldn't be a 6 footer and be a crewman on a Soviet tank. You get your arm ripped off by the autoloader if you're too big. It would just grab you and try to cram your arm into the into the breech, and then the airborne troops, the BMDs, we don't have those in Team Yankee at all yet. They were even smaller, so they definitely economized, went to the 3-man crews, had very cramped spaces just for the mass production effect, and it is a total difference. You get into an M1 or a Challenger or a Leopard 2 turret, and you think that you're in a Cadillac.
I know for us, we had one at the War Museum, an M577, which is an M113 Command.
Yeah, right.
Queen Mary, because it was one of the few vehicles that you could stand up in, and there was like tons of room, so it was like standing inside a cruise ship.
Yeah,
and that's the special edition objective that they threw in the first M1 boxes.
Yep.
But I was going to say again, I think that's doctrinal though, because in the Soviet, like, you didn't get to pick what you did. You didn't sign up for, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll be a tanker. It's like, nope, we're going to make these this small. We have a huge population in Russia, and it's anybody who's below this, you're a tanker, and you just don't get a choice.
Yep.
And I think that's just something that in the West that isn't even a design philosophy at all. That the Soviets are like, yeah, we have enough people. We'll just tell them they're tankers, and they don't get a choice.
Yeah. When I was in Tajikistan, there was they had a lot of surplus Soviet stuff, and you could find vendors with this stuff. And I was like, oh great, I'll buy me some Soviet tanker gear, and it was like Munchkin uniforms. I'm like, who wore these things? People like teenagers.
Well, I will say this
stuff.
for the Team Yankee game in general, like, it's given me an opportunity to learn a lot about the more modern stuff that I wouldn't have had a chance to do. Like, a friend of mine who I play with around here, George Purdy, was like telling people the story of what it was like to train to get into the chemical stuff, and I've learned stuff from you, Tom. It's crazy to think, because I didn't know a lot about it, so I get to learn something cool, even if it's about a fictional war that didn't happen, thankfully.
Hey, before we get too far off the Basij formations here, one thing is I'm looking at these guys. In the book they don't have the Iranians fighting the Israelis at all. They have that. They're different theaters. They're fighting against different causes, whatever. But I'm looking at these guys and I'm thinking like Hezbollah in 1982. The Bekaa Valley.
Yeah.
I think you could use these as some of those formations if you wanted to.
Lebanon.
Yeah, exactly. Now that's the force we do need. We need the Lebanese. They were still using M48s, by the way, and we need the Israeli, the Lebanese militia. Major? What's that guy's name? There was a whole like brigade that was commanded by some Lebanese major.
Oh my God, I have the Osprey book of it.
Yeah, I think they were a Christian militia, somebody's Christian militia, and they were Israeli allies, if you will.
Like Coptic Christians, or.
No, well, yeah, they weren't Coptic, be like Egyptian, but yeah, they're just Christians in Lebanon that formed a militia
from the French occupation.
Yeah. You see, and we had the Marines in Lebanon, of course, with the Beirut bombing and everything. There's a lot yet to still uncover in that theater. Some missing parts that would be nice, but this could be used for the Hezbollah guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kuwait had an army back then.
Yeah, who was talking about doing that? Was that you? Somebody was talking about doing it.
I think it was Andy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember some chat out there about someone doing
Yeah, that was him.
I guess using the Iranians to do a Kuwaiti force.
Yeah.
The Iranians, you can do almost everything. It's like, I want this unit, this unit, this unit. Here you go. It's in the Iranian list.
Yeah.
If you want maximum flexibility.
I think we're going to see a lot of Iranian lists. I think they're really powerful.
So let's close out, because we're at an hour and 15, and I don't want to keep this too long, because he's got to cut it down a bit, I think. But just closing impressions of the book, is it worth a buy? What kind of things would you get out of it? And let's just start
first.
Go ahead.
first book that has, apart from the initial main rule book, it's the first one book with multiple lists from different forces.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Apart from the very first rule book, I mean, this has it's more of a theater thing, and I'm frankly shocked that they didn't make this kind of like Fate of a Nation where it's on its own. I'm glad it's integrated into Team Yankee. It gives, because Team Yankee was all okay, yes, Western Europe, yada yada yada. This opens up a whole new world.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively. And so now in events, well, geez, I might face Red Thunder Russians. I might face U.S. Marine Corps. I might face these Iranians. There's going to be a lot more choices you're going to have to make when throwing together a list. This book, and I think the book is fantastic. Maybe some things could have been tested / balanced / pointed differently, but who am I to know, right? I don't know anything. Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm playing the worst list that's in here, but whatever.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I'll bet you're going to beat me anyway.
The Syrian list is pretty bad. It's not that great.
I'm not so thrilled about the Israelis, but maybe against the Syrians they'll be all right. nice historical opponent, be just fine.
Well, I can't touch your Merkavas except for with Heinz and I think T-72s.
Yeah, but I'm probably going to have M60s, so there you go. You have a chance.
Yeah, then that would be a good game. But I think overall, it's a great book. It's got a whole bunch of extra kit for a whole lot of people. I think it's a 10 out of 10 in terms of what it adds to the game. So I like it.
Tom, go ahead.
I dig it. I am less excited about the Israelis in terms of competitiveness, but I'm still going to do them for just gaming joy and historical scenarios and Syrian opponents and et cetera. So and I'm looking honestly forward to doing the Merkavas. I honestly didn't know about the Pera at all. I didn't know they existed. I mean, that's you talk about what you learn, and I spent my entire life learning this stuff and studying foreign nations' arsenals and equipment and organizations, and I didn't know about that dummy tank with was it Tasmuz missile launcher system, the non-line of sight. That was all news to me. So it's like, wow, how did I miss that?
They kept it hush hush for a very, very long time.
Honestly, I didn't know about the storms either. I can pull up all the old Soviet organizational books and study guides that we had. We didn't have any intel on the storm. At least it wasn't being published. And so when that thing came out in the game, I was like, well, I never heard of this damn thing. And then I started researching. I'm like, oh yeah, it did exist, but it's just something.
Well, I think it's because it looks like just like an MTLB, but because the tube folds all the way in.
Yeah. It just kept off the radar screen, literally. But no, so I'm excited. I'm not planning to do any of the Syrian, Iranians, Hezbollah, Bajis, whatever. But I like that my Soviets could, in a pinch, be put in that role and then be used against the Israeli forces. So I think it's good. I think it's going to let people blend things and try some different things. Will it be unbalancing and breaking? To be determined. There's certainly a lot of potential here, and as we all know, that if there's a way to abuse something, it will get abused. And there's a lot of things here that need to be looked at hard. So I'm kind of cautiously looking at this from the tournament perspective, but from the historical gaming perspective, I think it's righteous. I'm ready to get into it.
I think I agree with what everybody said. I most agree with Matt Varnish's comment that it opens up an entire new world of this, because that's a point that I hadn't considered, that this is the first book that includes armies from both nations. It's got a lot of variety to it. I've already mentioned on Facebook that I have a preview copy of it. I'm buying it anyway. Because I like having the physical book in my hands, because I just like being able to flip through and make lists like that. I guess I'm old fashioned. I'm building a list from this. I don't know what it is, and I've been debating, but I want to build something that I can play for this theater, because I think it's a cool option to do it. And I've had a bunch of Soviet Warsaw Pact stuff sitting on my shelf for a while, so I might use the T-62s that I bought off of Matt Varnish at Canadian Nationals to paint for that. And I have another pile of T-55s from the Vietnam Pact that I might paint up, that I can run both ways. So I'm excited to try this. I want to play test a lot of this stuff. the other cool thing that I learned that I don't know if it's probably out already, but I forget who told me. I think it might have been you, Matt Varnish, that the Team Yankee objective for the national tournaments this year is the DeLorean.
It is.
And I can't wait to buy that failed Northern Irish car, and just go to town painting it with a flux capacitor, and really explore the untold story of Back to the Future, which is how are Marty and Doc friends?
Yeah.
Will old man Peabody continue trying to breed pine trees? So like I want to get that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually play in the Team Yankee Nationals because I might be helping to run it. But Matt Varnish, if you're coming down, I'd love to get a practice game against this stuff because I know that every time we play, we have fun, even if one of us gets caved in by gepards.
If you help run it, you certainly deserve to get one of those objectives.
Yeah, I might just steal one under the table while Mitch is, making some
you're still there as a possible ringer too. So
yeah,
you're standing by to play. So you should be considered a participant.
Okay.
You should earn it.
I'll steal my DeLorean.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Wait, what I think somebody should make, and I hope somebody will, is the opposite. So you'll have the objective with the Doc and Marty. Somebody should make another objective with Biff Tannen's really slick Mercury.
Yeah,
and then have Marty on the hoverboard behind him.
Oh my God.
Oh, I thought you wanted with the truck with the horse manure.
I was thinking that too, but I really like the one where he's like, "Oh, McFly, everybody knows that those can't go over water," and just have the little pink hoverboard. That'd be badass.
Yeah.
That's your other objective. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I have to wonder what they'll do next.
We'll find out.
Next year.
Well, thank you guys very much for finding the time to hop on and talk about the book.
Thanks.
And from all of us here at No Dice, No Glory, thank you very much for listening. Have a good night.
Thanks so much for listening. Remember to stop by the website at www.nodicenoglory.com for even more information on wargaming news and reviews and great forums where you can argue about everything wargaming related to your heart's content. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.